Howdy everyone, it's me once again, the one and only Killer Dan. And today, I still have some more stuff to talk about, Disney related stuff, so I guess in this case, it's going to be about a TV show. And yes, I know when it comes to TV shows, it's something I don't often review, so just keep that in mind. I don't review TV shows all that often. It's mostly because of a personal choice, really. I much prefer watching lots of movies than watching a ton of episodes of something. But I make this an exception, so it's gonna be for the one show, the Disney's Mandarin, and yeah, it did receive rave reviews. Yes, I know I didn't review this at the time of its premiere, and a lot of people did. So I was too busy discussing a bunch of other stuff, and yeah, I know. Yeah, I spoke about this individual before. Like him, for example, discussing what he had done. And yes, he was one of those individuals who basically complained about Disney's Star Wars sequel trilogy, mostly because of the fact that it was had a female lead and the fact that it was owned by the Disney Corporation, which of course is total nonsensical.
He doesn't like you.
I'm sorry.
I don't like you either.
What's up, bro? What, bro? Sup, bro? Take a swing, bro. Right here, bro.
Yeah, no, I'm probably one of the few people, but I did enjoy the Disney Star Wars film, so of course I was pretty happy to hear that this program was actually announced. And also, they also stated the fact that season 2 is in production, so I guess I better get on it, of course. And I figured I would at least mention something Star Wars related in this Disney-a-thon, I guess. Well, anyway, of course, as usual, I do have to talk about the plot of this film. So let's get into it, shall we? So pretty much taking place in the Outer Rim, where a lot of people couldn't really reach them, nor the heroes, nor the villains, really. They're way out there. And also, then top of that, taking some inspiration from a lot of the Western type stuff, which I do appreciate because I like watching a lot of the old, obscured, low budget cowboy movies, which, of course, I've reviewed quite a bit of. And, of course, to have a bit of inspiration of that as well added here. So you can obviously see that. But, of course, still having like a Star Wars feel to it, of course. And this was the first live action movie inspired Star Wars TV show. Otherwise, usually it was animated, usually. Taking place roughly a decade after the original Star Wars trilogy. And yeah, of course, it's gonna connect itself to that, and yeah, there are gonna be lots of references to those films, but it's also gonna be about roughly 20 years prior the Star Wars sequel trilogy. So I'm just had to point that out, just so everyone knows. Obviously, there's gonna be some crazy stuff going on, lots of fighting, obviously. So even if our main character wanted to get some help from the heroes, the New Republic, they can't really do that because of the fact, like I mentioned earlier, a moment ago. The story takes place in the Outer Rim. So in other words, even if our main character, for whatever reason, wanted to get some assistance from the heroes, the New Republic is actually way too far to actually give him any sort of assistance, even if he wanted to. Wanting to help the Philippines, but can't because they're too far away or whatnot. It's just thinking about it. And even if they could, it would take quite some time. Just putting that in perspective. Well, anyway, like I was saying with the story, of course, it's basically a space western opera kind of a thing going on here. So of course, there's gonna be plenty of shooting going on throughout the entire each episode and whatnot, and each episode might focus on various aspects of the overall plot. Basically, it's going to center around this lone gunfighter individual, this Mandarin, and of course, he wants to make a living, obviously, in his own way. He makes his way in the outreaches, of course, in this area where, let's just say, life isn't exactly easy, of course. And he goes into the idea that he has to live in a code of honor kind of a thing because it's part of what he does. So, yeah, of course, his backstory is actually explored right here, of course, quite a bit. I don't want to get too specific with what his backstory is because it's a big whole ordeal, of course. And yes, I know there's lots of material on this kind of a thing anyway, when considering the fact those video games, those comics, those graphic novels, and the Star Wars expanded universe of anyway. And yes, this TV show, despite what my people might say, Disney is not really entirely ignoring what was already published in books and was made in video games. All of this is still connected. Even though there might be some tweak ups here and there when it comes to some specific part of the story, sure. But the Mandarin is still connected to all of that. Even if you want to argue this might be like a side thing, but it's still connected. Still connected, just like the animated movies they made in the past. But honestly, folks, in retrospect, I thought the Mandarin TV show is actually a lot better than a lot of the animated shows that were made. Because the animated shows, I didn't care for them, but really, folks, I watched a bit of it here and there, but I didn't like it. But anyway, this TV show is more how I wanted to see a Star Wars TV show because it does take itself rather seriously. I mean, yeah, it does get pretty violent. I mean, not in a graphic sense, really, but it does get pretty violent in its own little way. I mean, yes, okay, a lot of violence is heavily implied, sure, but it still some of the violence does occur on screen. So I wouldn't exactly say that this is something for the little kids. Of course, this happens for the story. It's not done for its own sake. Of course, it's done within the context. So yes, of course, expect lots of shooting, lots of stuff blowing up or whatever. But then again, this is Star Wars we're talking about, so of course that kind of thing's going to occur. Obviously. Yes, I know. These animated shows that they produced over the years were actually quite popular, but honestly, I didn't like it. There was also that one animated movie as well, which was pretty bad. The Star Wars: The Clone Wars was probably the most popular anime series of the bunch, but honestly, I thought all the animated shows were pretty awful. So yeah, from what I seen, I really didn't like it like at all. From what I heard, the character of Ahsoka is going to be potentially in a live action movie, which I'm not exactly happy about because I never liked her in the animated film that I just brought up a moment ago. And yes, I do realize in the animated show they did attempt to give her more of a character, which is fine and all, but I still didn't care for it really. But anyway, my point being is that the matter in the TV show is a lot better. This one season is a lot better than all the animated shows put together. And I didn't see all of it entirely, but I was just couldn't really get myself too much into it really because it was way too family friendly. Yes, I do realize those violence and whatnot within those animated shows. Sure, okay, but the contrast just seems off because a lot of it just really comes off kind of goofy, silly, or whatever. I just didn't like that at all. It makes it really difficult to take Star Wars as a whole seriously because of that. The entire franchise. So my point being is that the TV show, the live action series, Mandarin, is more in tune on what I would like to see Star Wars. So I'll give it that. So that's definitely a good thing there, of course. And yeah. Before anybody says it in the comics section, I'll bring this character up, and that character is there. You go, this character. A lot of people said that this has been one of the cutest characters ever to be shown in Star Wars, and yes, that character does look pretty damn precious. I would definitely admit that. And also, thankfully, the that character. A lot of people say Baby Yoda, but whatever. The character was never really named Baby Yoda, at least from what I recall from watching that show. The show I only watched it once. From what I remember, folks, I never really recall that character being officially called Baby Yoda. But anyway, on the bright side, I mean, usually having super cutesy wootsy things in a series or movies would often will bug me. A lot of the time, it would piss me off really because the contrast would be off or whatever. Or just cutesy wootsy things would just piss me off because lot of these times they would just be annoying, really. But thankfully, that doesn't really bring the show down at all because that character actually amounts to something in the story. That it would be, and is treated as a character, not as a prop or anything like that. That character is actually treated as an important figure in the grand scheme of things. So that's definitely a good thing. And our main character would be forced to protect it, of course, because, like I said, there would be plenty of dangerous situations. So the stakes are actually really, really high. The characters are not just there just for their own sake. They actually amount to something. So that's definitely a good thing. This woman will also become an important figure in the grand scheme of things as well. And she does, of course, have her own backstory as well, which I actually did appreciate. So these characters will actually have something to do in the grand scheme of things. So they're not just plot devices just to push things forward. They're not just thrown in there just for the convenience of the story. So that's definitely a good thing there. What I'm saying is that this TV show isn't treating the viewers like they're stupid. So that's definitely a good thing. There's a plus there. The narrative in the grand scheme of things, again, point being is that everything seems to be tied up rather well. So that's definitely a plus because of the fact that they know what they're doing really. And of course, I do like the writing. Obviously, the writing is actually really nicely done. The dialogue is actually really well done. They could have easily turned this entire thing into some kid-friendly, happy-go-lucky kind of a thing. They could have easily turned into that. So I'm really thankful that they didn't. And also, yeah, space western. To some people, that's going to sound goofy. That's going to sound really silly. But thankfully, the people behind this took this seriously enough to actually work out the whole idea, of course, and really have it be done in a well executed manner. That's definitely a great thing there as well. So the writing is really good in each episode, and each episode blends into each other rather well. Each episode leads into another one, so everything does feel like very connected with each episode. Nothing felt dragged out or anything. So the pacing for each episode is actually really good. Even if not every single episode is action packed. Yes, there's plenty of action to be had in this show. And even if not every single episode has a bunch of shooting in it. So, I'll give props and I'll give credit when credit is due. This little robot droid thing will of course become an important part of the story as well. We get to see he's helping the main character. And also, a thing I'll point out is the fact that, yeah, looks very familiar. Because of the fact that that same thing was also in this video game as well. So that's pretty cool, I guess. Okay. Technically, it's two different modders because that one I just showed was actually destroyed in the game. So technically speaking, it's two different modders, I guess you would say. But you get what I'm getting at. It's the same kind of thing that we're aiming for, of course. But point being, when it comes to Star Wars, they really want to have some sort of droid to be a part of the story in some sort of thing, and they're basically continuing that in this show. So that is definitely much appreciative of this, of course. So it's really trying to keep in tone of the original Star Wars trilogy, which in a lot of ways is fine, I guess, because they're trying to have their own take on it, I guess. And that in itself, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, as long as you can make the stories feel refreshing, make it seem interesting, and that's what they're trying to have a balance of both. Electric and whatnot, but while simultaneously isn't exactly going to fight against them either. So when it comes to have a more content that will have a way to display how the character is, and it's definitely expressed in the TV show. Have some sort of morality, I guess you can say, in other words. So, in a lot of ways, this show does have a lot of moments where his character traits will be displayed. So, it's also very character driven, is what I'm saying. Yeah, it's story driven, yes, of course, but also can be described as a way of being very character driven, which, yes, I do appreciate that the show would actually do that. So, props for that. As in the Empire or any other individual group that might be deemed as the villains. Of course, there's a bunch of groups, of course, because in this area it's basically a lawless land. There's no real government to govern anything really. So he would, of course, be fighting against them as well. So yeah, it gets pretty damn crazy as it continues, which is fine because you do have to make this show seem exciting in a lot of ways, and that's what they exactly done right here. So it does make it seem like a pretty interesting way to express these characters, these situations, and you will wonder how they're going to make it out exactly. And that's a good thing there. As for the production of this film, the production is actually really nicely done as well because you can obviously tell that there's a lot of money. When it comes to TV shows, you're not going to really expect it to have the same kind of budget that the movies would have. While the TV show is going to itself, this one doesn't have the same budget production values as the movies do, but you can obviously tell that it still has quite a bit of money thrown at it. So nothing really feels cheap, really. So you can say that a lot of the sets and whatnot do look very, very detailed. And in that regard, they spent their budget rather well. So that can actually be a good thing, folks, right there, because of the fact that Disney is a well known corporation. So, of course, they wouldn't mind spending quite a bit of money for these kind of things since these movies had made a lot of money. Han Solo film didn't exactly meet box office expectations, so far that's like the lowest grossing film that Disney has made when it comes to the Star Wars franchise. But for the most part, these movies had made a lot of money. And speaking of that movie does have a very similar feel to the TV show. As long, anyway, as far as I'm concerned, it does feel like very similar-ish to that style of the movie. Which I mean, as a compliment, of course. Was pretty much under Imperial rule, and wherever the main character of this show went into, not really. Like I would say, he's kind of like a lawless kind of a thing they're going for. So, like I said again, I'm not trying to repeat myself too much, but at least for the vast majority of the story, never takes place in a far outer rim when it comes to this TV show, the setting of it anyway. But I guess they're trying to have something still keep refreshing and whatnot. And one thing I noticed is that the attitude from the fans compared to this TV show and then compared to the Saw or sequel trilogy produced by the same company. A lot of the fans seem to be more welcoming to this show than compared to the Star Wars sequel trilogy because a lot of people, a lot of fans anyway, had stated that the Star Wars sequel trilogy was probably the worst era of the Star Wars saga, which is something I have to disagree. Because I actually liked the Star Wars sequel trilogy. Yes, the ones with Rey and Finn and all of them. I actually liked those Star Wars films because honestly, they were actually pretty good. Though, if I'm gonna be blunt here, The Last Jedi is probably my least favorite, really, of the bunch. But still liked it a lot more than the prequel trilogy. The prequel trilogy of these films are still some of the worst films I've ever seen when it comes to sci-fi or any other movie for that example. But, I mean, yes, there is a noticeable change when it comes to the Mandarin TV show compared to the sequel trilogy. I mean, yes, you can tell there's a noticeable tone difference to some degree. You could tell it varied in a lot of ways. But yeah, I think it's just probably because there were probably too many cooks in the kitchen when it comes to the Star Wars sequel trilogies. That's why the TV show and the movies, the sequel trilogy, I mean, don't exactly feel all the same when compared to this. And I'm not gonna blame those films entirely, really. A bit. I think in some ways it's because of Disney having too many hands at once when it comes to those films. Really, I mean, and you can tell, especially with the Last Jedi, it feels vastly different compared to this, and compared to the Force Awakens and the Rise of Skywalker. I mean, don't get me wrong. Before anybody tells me, I don't mind if the Star Wars films do some different. If you are, by all means, go for it. But in this case, it doesn't mean in an entirely great way because the director of The Last Jedi, while The Last Jedi did have a lot of great moments, I'll admit that. But the director of that film wanna just cave into some criticism. Well, okay, I won't really call it criticism really because even yes, a lot of fans did bash the Last Jedi for no good reason really. But anyway, point being is that the director of the Star Wars Force Awakens and the Rise of Skywalker, those two Star Wars films did receive a lot of controversy, especially The Force Awakens, for having hints of homosexuality in it, which yes didn't really go all that well with many of the viewers. Really, yes, even the fans themselves, or some of them anyway. They didn't really want that to be in those Star Wars films, which yes, I would say that's really homophobic and closed-minded, obviously, but the dude who did The Last Jedi wanted to counter that controversy by having more of a straight type of relationship, which just is stupid because you just saw the guy was just caving in into pressure just because a lot of people complain about it. So that's just moronic. I didn't like that. I admit I didn't like that at all, really. That was just not necessary at all. But point being, I just don't like how some people just cave in, just would easily fold under pressure. That's just ridiculous, folks. But I know I'm just going on and on a few things here, but whatever. Point being is that I know those are different. The feel when it comes to the way it was done comes off different from films, which in itself doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing either. It doesn't have to be a bad thing in that sense because you do have to keep it refreshing. You do have to keep it interesting, especially when it comes to a movie franchise like Star Wars that keeps making multiple sequels, multiple prequels, TV shows, yada yada yada. You do have to find out a way to make it seem, interesting, so it could come off, engaging and have new fans, of course, to watch these kinds of things. So, which is, of course, understandable. You have to keep things interesting in some sort of way. One other thing I would like to bring up is the fact that this does get pretty dark. Yup. Really gruesome, folks. Which, of course, I do think is a good thing because, again, it doesn't have to be for kids. And I keep bringing this up, but it doesn't have to be for kids. Not everything needs to be for children. So, I know that seems pretty obvious, but still. Point being is that I know a lot of people just want anything Star Wars related to be for children just because they can take little Jimmy over here to watch it. So when you think about these movies are very political in a lot of ways. I know a lot of people would of course disagree with that because they would claim that Star Wars was never political, which it was. Star Wars was always political. That alone should tell you that these stories aren't exactly going to be aimed for children, like at all. So on top of the violence you see, let's make everything for kids. That's not a good thing, folks. Making everything for kids is not a bad idea. Like I said, these stories, the storylines they would use, are actually really political. And then on top of that, with the violence that they will have, I mean, okay, I mean, some of the stuff is more violent than others. Sure, I'll give you that. But that alone should tell you that not every single thing should be for children. Give me a break here. So I remind you of what happened during the 80s with the video game crash in 1983. The video game crash of 1983 was basically a large scale recession for the video game industry that occurred in the United States from 1983 through 1984, primarily in the United States. So they were cranking out these video games like crazy, of course. And yes, granted, you can always say that there were several factors that played into it, but one of them was, of course, a market saturation in a number of consoles and available games as well, of course. And a lot of the stuff was aimed for children. So, yeah, there's gonna be plenty of video games for kids as it is, and then add more and more and more and more and more and more and more, and then more stuff for kids. You realize that they're going to that's going to put more pressure, financially speaking, because though, just like the movie industry or how, okay, in this case, TV shows, they need to make money. So the fact that you have more of them will decrease the chance of getting sold. So it also decrease the value of these said items. So having lots of stuff just for kids doesn't really make any sense at all in the financial way of thinking when it comes to this market. So it really doesn't make any sense when you think about it. So yeah, trying to say that literally everything Star Wars related should be aimed for children really does not make any sense. So yeah, I don't mind the darker tone stories, of course. So in this TV show, it's definitely a lot more darker as it tells the journey of this bounty hunter in the outer reach of the galaxy, so to speak, far from the New Republic and whatnot. And they pretty much, he and some other characters pretty much had to go through this crazy adventure, of course. And yes, yeah, it does get pretty crazy as a whole. The story itself is really good, folks. I know I keep bringing that up. This was definitely a top-notch TV show. And I really liked that. I liked the way they were trying to do it all together. They were really doing a good job expanding the universe that a lot of people are already familiar with as it is. So that's definitely a plus there. This was definitely a great watch, folks, and I wouldn't mind watching again one of these days. One thing I would definitely say that I know that little droid thing I just showed a little earlier. The thing is that our main character had to do something with that because let's just say it was in safety of that baby Yoda thing. And yeah, I know some people would disagree with me on this, but I really don't care honestly. Because at the end of the day, I did enjoy this TV show just as much as I did with these Star Wars Disney films that they made. All of these stories with the films and the TV show, I actually really liked it very much. I mean, granted, yes, okay, the movies do have flaws, but then again, a lot of movies do nowadays. Not that I'm trying to excuse anything, of course, but I did appreciate the fact that they're trying to use this TV show as a way to explore many themes that were already in the films already, but not make it too much of a repeat, really. So there's definitely a good amount of quality of this, of writing, and the overall production. Even the editing was really well done. I can't just imagine how crazy the editing for this TV show can be because those multiple episodes. I'm not just talking about one long movie or whatever, but these are just multiple episodes. So I'm pretty sure that the editing for this show was pretty much a nightmare because there's a lot of episodes and a lot of pressure because this isn't some super low budget TV show. It's something that a lot of people are aware of, so it's a really well known thing. So yeah, of course, a lot of pressure was on the shoulders of people who were behind this So yeah, they definitely had to make sure a lot of the editing was really well done, of course. In a lot of ways, they succeeded in doing so, of course. The editing was actually really nicely put together as a whole. The editing in each episode was top notch, and that's definitely a good thing there. They kept the editing tight, kept it clean, so that in that regard is definitely really well put together with the editing, of course. I never felt that there was no scene. But thankfully, despite all the pressure that they had for this show, they managed to put something together anyway. And I did like what they were going for. Trying to basically tie up everything from the show, from the movies, in the show, of course. Even though it may be taking place like a side story kind of a thing, but it's still connected to the all of the other comics or so on and so forth. And then we get to see a certain alien type character, yeah, her, which was shown in the original Star Wars trilogy. So that's cool. Of course, this TV show does attempt to go into the character's backstory because that's the whole thing of his history, being clan based and whatnot, having some type of members from some type of ways of living and be bounded by a common culture, creed, and code, of course. So obviously, the show just spent a good amount of time attempting to develop the character, of course, which is fine because you should have a character in a show that's pretty interesting, of course. Even though I was never really a huge fan of Star Wars at all, but it was able to keep my interest anyway throughout the entire thing. So that's something I would definitely like what was done here, obviously. They definitely had the good intentions for the entire show. Of course, they try to make sure that everything's done properly, and it definitely shows that they had the passion, the direction, the whole idea behind here was to explore some themes, some characters from familiar characters that we've seen from films, but done even more in this show, which is fine, but despite the fact that Star Wars had already had an expanded universe in its lore, so I guess doing a live action TV show based upon what was already done before it wouldn't hurt nobody, I suppose. Thankfully, this is done really well, of course. I do like the fact that this show does take itself seriously. Of course, it wasn't so, of course, uptight all the time, by which I mean that, of course, there's nothing wrong with trying to use humor as a way to, I guess, lighten the moment to ease attention. The Star Wars films had always used humor anyway when you think about it, so it's not a shocker that this show would, of course, attempt to have some sort of humor as well, which, of course, I'm fine with because of the fact that they try to match in tone what the movies were trying to do, of course. They were not trying to disrespect the films at all. They were trying to make sure they could have their own thing while paying respect to the movies, of course. So in that regard, it's being done really tastefully in what they were trying to do. Of course, they're trying to keep it in tune with what they were attempting to do with the movies, but do their own thing, while simultaneously try to keep their own thing going on with their own story. And yes, of course, this whole show does have its own story going on, while not being too distant from what made the movies good. So there's going to be a great connection to everything, of course. So that's fine, obviously. And yes, of course, if you're familiar with the source material, by which I mean the Star Wars lore, you can definitely get a lot of the references throughout the entire thing. And that's definitely a plus there because they're not trying to push away the canon, of course. Even though Disney had already added to its lore already as it is over the years, obviously. So I would definitely say it's a good thing there in that regard. You're trying to make sure that do not try to ignore the books, the video games, so on and so forth. So of course, a lot of the stuff is still connected anyway, obviously, which I have to say is a plus because it shows that they know what they're doing. Of course, the Mandalorian is supposed to be this type of character that's a field warrior in the galaxy. A prideful warrior, sure, but he has to have his combat skills, and obviously he's a part of his culture and his identity. The spirit, of course, he's supposed to have a strong code of honor, obviously, that could be evoked to settle disputes with one-on-one combat that could conclude with the death of one opponent, of course. It's a type of tradition for single combat extended beyond justice. However, the main character is even the type of person that's going to fight for the glory of fighting great opponents, of course, and that's going to be explored definitely in here. So, yes, of course, we see our main character being really a skilled fighter in the hand-to-hand combat, and of course, when it comes to shooting, obviously. So, of course, we see that bit of history reflected on the character. Of course, this is kind of a thing that's been going on for quite some time. And let's just say that the show is trying to have this character has his own personality throughout the show. He's not just some stock character that was invented just for the show. His personality does come out genuine like it was supposed to, of course. As for the music in here is actually really nice, folks. I really did like the music that was done for the show. The music feels like it was really accurate. It does give you like a Star Wars feel to it, of course. The music really helps it, obviously, because of the fact you can. Just the music alone feels like it was really professionally made. They actually did care of what they wanted to do in regards to music. The music does help to create our pretty intense tone, even when it is about to finish or beginning of each episode and the ending of each episode as well. The music, the musical scores for each individual episode were beautifully scored. So, in regards to music, it was actually really, really nice done. So that's definitely a plus there. Thankfully, they actually cared about the music as well, not just one aspect of show. So that's definitely a great thing there. So of course, I had to give credit when credit's due, even in regards of music. It's going to show how to express the tone, the fighting, or any other scene that would be important. I mean, okay, granted, you don't always need music for every little scene, of course. So the music here is done with a purpose to help out to express the story. So it's done whenever it's needed, of course. So the music is purposely placed in very specific moments throughout the series, the show, to make that as if that is really important, because it does. I know music isn't always spoken about when it comes to TV shows, which is odd and actually kind of sad because, in fact, music is just as important in the TV shows and as well in movies. So, and also do have to consider the fact that it can actually help to express the story, the idea of what they want to do. So that's definitely something right here when they're trying to do here. So the music is really does help to give the show more life in a lot of ways. So that's definitely helping it out throughout the thing. Alright, one thing I didn't bring up just yet, and that's the acting. The acting in here is actually really nicely done as well. Yeah, what do you know? A TV show with good acting. I know acting isn't always spoken about when it comes to TV shows, but acting should be brought up because just like with music, acting is just as important to these to the TV shows, just like in the movies, especially from the main character. The main character, the actor, he really does a really great job as well. I did appreciate the fact that he did take this seriously enough to actually put a lot of effort in the character. The dialogue could be some of the best written dialogue of all time, but the dialogue ain't gonna mean shit if the acting is terrible. But thankfully, the acting is actually really well done in here. So I can say that it's really appreciative that the acting here is actually really good. Even if when it comes to the minor characters, the supporting characters, basically everyone showed the acting in here is actually really good. And that's definitely a plus there because of the fact that they're trying to express the characters through their acting, of course. Each character has their own personality. No one character acts exactly the same. So none of the characters are bland, like at all. Of course, a lot of it has something to do with the writing, of course. But like I mentioned a moment ago, you can have the best writing, but the writing ain't gonna mean nothing if the acting is terrible, of course. But thankfully, the writing and the acting are both top notch in this show. The acting really does help to express the characters having their own personalities, have their own ethic and codes, of course. Sometimes can do a whole lot with so little, and that's definitely here, folks. This is definitely a top-notch show, and the actors and actresses are really putting their stuff together to make a really entertaining program, which they did. They took their roles seriously enough. I mean, all the characters are good to see. Maybe even the bad guys aren't getting along with each other really. Even the villain type characters can actually be fighting against each other, which of course is actually pretty realistic when you think about it. So when it comes to certain roles, even the much smaller roles I was saying, even with them, it shows that they're trying to give a lot of personality, of course, with these type of characters through their acting. So they're trying to show that there's a bunch of characters in this side of galaxy, and of course all these characters have their own stories going on, of course. And the actors and actresses are really attempting to express that kind of a thing in this show. And I can also bring up the fact that the makeup, even the makeup in here is actually really nice. The makeup, the outfits and whatnot are really nicely done. Again, I have to bring up the fact that you can really tell that this show had a budget. It really did. It really showed that a TV show, while it can be more time restrained compared to a movie, but the TV show can be more time restricting of course, but it can actually show that with a very limited amount of time, you can still have great sets and great wardrobes for the characters. They're really trying to show that they can actually have a lot of ways to express the time period in which this was supposed to take place in, and that's really is a good thing. Again, it showed that they really care. And I did like the actors and actresses, no matter what the scene is, no matter how small scaled or grand scaled the scene is, the actresses and actors were able to pull off every single scene. There's not one scene throughout the entire thing that I felt was out of place. Every single thing here was nicely put together. Even the acting was really nicely done. It made me really believe that these were characters living in this in this planet or that planet or in this side of wherever they're supposed to be. And yeah, it really showed that you can have really good acting, making you believe that these characters actually existed. I mean, you know, deep down they don't exist, but the acting in here is so good that you can actually make you believe. So, along with the good makeup and good wardrobes, really helped sell this point. So, All of this is really put together because of that as well. So I really do like the fact that they were really trying to have something here, obviously. And I can say that's a good thing because of the fact that they were really trying to have a way to express these characters, of course. I know I keep bringing up the characters, folks, I know, but when it comes to, I know when it comes to Star Wars, the characters are very important, and rightfully so. And of course, the actors and actresses will have a lot of stress, a lot of pressure to do these characters right, and they actually did. They actually successfully pull these characters off in a lot of ways, which I did enjoy because it really showed that they cared of what they were trying to do. It really showed them what they were aiming for, even though this was just several episodes into a series. And I wouldn't mind seeing the second season. If they keep this quality up, I wouldn't mind seeing even more. And that's definitely a good thing there. But like we're saying, folks, the acting is definitely top notch here from everyone. I mean, when I say everyone, all the actresses, all the actors from everyone involved in this project really did their best right here. So in regards of acting, it's really top notch. So that's definitely a good thing there. So I wouldn't mind seeing that again. Of course, how came that top notch of acting throughout even another season? I would actually think that'd be a great thing. Of course. Now, one personality is the same, like we were saying before, as it was up to the actors and actresses to actually express that even more, of course. And I did like that because they actually cared. They actually had the passion, they had the spirit, they had the soul, and of course, put it all together all in one show. Speaking of characters, our main character will have this advanced type of armor, was specifically made for him, and people like him. So what I'm saying right here is that he would have this reputation that would be fear across the galaxy and having this kind of combat skills and along with the great armor, a lot of tools, the jetpacks, the types of boots, technical display, lots of great armor that would display many weaponry and tools designed for combat and abilities. Some of these weapons, of course, can be useful in a lot of ways for their for this type of fighting throughout the show. Our main character will be the type of warrior that will possess many advanced combat fighting skills from fighting for so long and never there's just expressed some type of conflict throughout this show. Even though despite the fact that our main character might be highly skilled in hand-to-hand combat or be skilled when it comes to fighting, he will still have some trouble depending on what's going on. For the special effects in this film inspired series, the special effects were actually quite good considering the fact that this is a TV show. Yeah, no, I keep bringing up the fact that this has a high production value, but then again, it's Disney, and Star Wars became a pretty much household name for a lot of people. And yeah, they wouldn't mind spending quite a bit of money for the special effects in this show. The special effects in the show, again, don't expect this like anything like groundbreaking, like some other movies or whatever. But for what it's worth, the special effects were actually quite good, considering the fact that it's a show. And yeah, yeah, the special effects will be good because they will have to make you feel like it's actually there, as if it was actually going on right in front of you, that was actually happening. The special effects were quite good, considering the fact that it didn't look cheap, like at all. And in that regard, they just succeed in what they were trying to do. Yeah, of course, there's going to be lots of explosions, lots of gunfights, obviously, but they had to make sure the special effects would match up with what they were trying to do. And in that regard, the special effects were really nicely done. The CGI didn't look cartoony. One other thing I would bring up is the fact that there's lots of practical effects. It wasn't super CGI like it was in the Star Wars prequel trilogy. And I know I keep shitting on the Star Wars prequel trilogy, but one of the main reasons I keep doing that is okay, besides the terrible storytelling, but the Star Wars prequel trilogy was also heavily criticized for the overuse of CGI, making it look way more cartoony than it should have. But thankfully, in this TV show, well, yes, there was some CGI or whatever being used throughout the TV show, but thankfully it's kept to a minimum. It doesn't look cartoony, it doesn't look over the top or anything like that, but thankfully it's kept in a tasteful way. I do appreciate the fact that it's also using practical effects like the old-fashioned special effects that were used way back in the day. So if anything, what I'm getting at, they actually use a combination of the two, and that's definitely a good thing in my book, and that's a plus. I just do wish more movies would actually pick up that as well. I know the movie Star Wars: The Force Awakens really attempted to do the same thing. The Disney Star Wars trilogy adapted the same kind of a thing, make good use of special effects, the CGI, and the practical effects as well. The Star Wars sequel trilogy did the same thing, combining the special effects of the traditional way practical effects and the CGI as well. So I'll definitely give it points for that. And I know I keep bringing up the sequel trilogy and the other Star Wars films that was produced by Disney because honestly, I did enjoy them. I just wish that the fan base would just try to let the films alone. I mean, if a movie's bad, fine. If a movie or TV show is bad, fine. Criticize it, but don't get mad at the fact that there's somebody else doing these films other than George Lucas. So anyway, I'm saying that the special effects in here are actually nicely done. They're not overdoing it, and that's definitely, without a shred of a doubt, a bad thing. No, sorry, because they made good use of the environment. Also, how to say that the camera work, the way the camera moves, really done. The way it's filmed, I've seen the way a lot of these films are done. It's also really nicely done as well because it's trying to give you a sense of of the area. It does feel adventurous. It does feel like it was like an adventurous kind of a thing, which it does give you that vibe. I like a really, really adventurous type of thing. So it was never boring. It was never ever boring throughout the entire thing. So I'll give it props for that. And yeah, I was entertained. Again, I know I've already said this. I was never a huge fan of this series, but it did help my interest long enough. And it didn't overstay its welcome. You don't need to have like a truck ton of episodes. And that's the other thing I gotta say about this series. It didn't overstay its welcome. You never felt like there was any moments that came off ridiculous. Nothing came off campy. Or thankfully it didn't do that. There was nothing extremely goofy that would take you out the moment. It didn't keep going long enough to make it seem like really stupid. It didn't become stupid. I guess that's the thing with some TV shows. With some TV shows, they keep going and going and going and going and going and going. Yes, while don't get me wrong, you would enjoy a TV show that sometimes you just don't want it to end or whatever. But the truth of the matter is that a lot of TV shows start off great, but will eventually go on to decline for keep going and going and going. And that did happen for a lot of TV shows. Often the storylines would become boring or too convoluted, and then maybe a lot of your favorite characters would become obnoxious versions of them former selves. So, yeah, I guess you can say a lot of the people were trying to have some ridiculous plot lines and just keep the show going and going. I know a lot of the TV shows may be on the air for quite some time, But I just hopefully they don't do that with this show. They don't just keep it going and going and going and going and just go downhill. Sometimes a good thing should just end. I mean, some people might want to argue. Maybe it depends on how they will deliver the storylines, whatever. Well, that might have a point, but still. And sometimes you just let it end already. And yeah, that's the thing, I guess, because if you keep it going and going, it would just get stupid. So hopefully that won't happen here. I'm hoping there won't be a decline in this show for making it going for too long. Maybe a few seasons, I guess, will do, but let's see how things go. For sure, there is going to be a second season. How about third or fourth or fifth season, or even a sixth season? I don't know. Just hopefully they won't keep it going and up to the point they just ruin it. But I guess, like I said, we'll see. We will see how things go, I suppose. Well, okay, this video has been on for this video has been going on for quite some time. So any final thoughts will be that I do have some good luck. I'm wishing this series well, of course, because it started off really great. I just hope it'll get better as it goes, or at the very least keep this same kind of quality, of course. If it doesn't get better, if it doesn't get worse, at least keep the same type of quality the first season. It already have a great first impression. So I guess the trick here is that keeping, yes, they have a great first impression, but keeping a lasting impression. So yeah, we just kind of have to see how things go from here on onward, of course. So I know this making TV shows. Disney has made multiple TV shows already. So I guess it's not that surprising as to they would actually do this. So no, it's not that surprising. I mean, the movies made a lot of money. Well, most of these movies made a lot of money anyway. So obviously they're gonna want to make a TV program based off of this. So that's fine. It was really well received. So this show is available on Disney Plus, and for now, that's the only way you can see this. So for anyone that's interested in watching the show, I got some news to tell you. You can only watch this for the under Disney Plus streams, which is fine. It's only exclusive for that and nowhere else. I know a lot of people may take that as a deal breaker because I know not a lot of people can afford the service because they're like a low income family or whatever the reason may be. But yeah, I hate to break it to you that this can only be viewed on that service. Would it actually always be like that? I don't know. We just see how things go. Would it ever be available on DVD or Blu-ray? I don't know. But for the time being, this is the only way you can actually watch this show on Disney Plus, and that's it. Only exclusively for the time being, anyway. I don't know what their plans for the show. I mean, when it comes to the releases, anyway. So for now, that's all way you can watch it. Which I can understand. It's a business tactic. At the end of the day, it's all part of a business. They have to make sure that people go to their streaming services, obviously. So I can see why they would do this. I see why they would do this, and that's fine by me. It makes sense as to why they would do this because, again, like I said, try and make money off of this brand. A lot of people like these types of characters anyway. So yeah, anyway, folks, I definitely recommend watching the show if you can get to it. That is. Well, I really liked it. It should be pretty obvious. I really did enjoy it, folks. Of course. So yeah, it's a good show. I'll give Mandarin season one an overall rating of a 7.5 out of 10. It gets a 0.5 out of 10 for me. So of course, as always, thanks for watching and take care.